skill without leading somebody to advocacy. It's all the same thing, but when you put it in bureaucratic terms so you can measure it in the law, they made it appear like it was separate things. But the founders who were there knew it wasn't separate things. It's just different facets of the same thing. But since we got to put it in measurable terms, you got independent living centers trying to divide you all up and say, well, she came for INR, he came for advocacy, they came for skills training. But I guarantee they did not get one without the other 3 or 4. It all came together. And so we produced these numbers and we put them in these little reports. And that's one of the great sacrifices that the Centers for Independent Living does on your behalf, is to file these little reports so that the money keeps coming down. To get the opportunities in your community to have the meeting spot you got, which is a beautiful room, and to have a center, which is a beautiful center, to have, have video cameras, to have, snacks on the table, to create the kind of environment where you can come together and work on those issues that are bothering you. Now, one of Alan's most important jobs is to be the host, and to say, okay, I got some travel money here, I got some rent and utilities, and I gotta set the stage and create the invitation, send out the invitations. But that's pretty. After that, it's up to you guys. It's up to the people who come in what's going to happen next or not happen next. Because Alan can't do it Alan can't do much more than what he did. Inviting everybody here, making sure the lights are on and the heat's on, making sure the room's adequate, making sure the interpreter's in her place. The rest is up to you all. What are you going to do with this? You got to send. It's you. It's the center. It's your center. What are you going to do with it? What are the issues that's the most pressing to you? And don't think for a minute you're going to put it in Alan's lap, because you're not. I'm a still director too, and you're not going to put it in my lap. I got enough to do keeping the lights on. I got enough to do fighting with the landlord. I got enough to do, making sure the equipment works. The rest, I'm the host. He's the host. The center belongs to the people coming in the door. We need all the volunteers we can get, because that's what should run a center. We have a little bit of money for some staff, and those the staff, those are the ones we can hold accountable and shake when things screw up. But they're not going to run the center. It's going to be the folks who come in and provide the volunteer time, the people who care enough and think it's worthwhile enough to make it happen in their community. And then the other piece is to go out and spread the gospel, to teach other folks that you don't have to be content with what they give you. You could find other people who see the same difficulties and problems with the system that you have, and team up and come up with a plan. Because if enough of you get together, and when I say enough, I'm saying 5, 10, and start really wrestling with an issue, they got to deal with you. They have to deal with you. They can't ignore you. You're too visible. You're too smart. You're too knowledgeable about their shortcomings. And because you know so much about what they're not doing in terms of providing the services they're supposed to be doing, they got to deal with you. Keep you quiet, at least, but that doesn't mean it'll work. Not when you can not when you can grow your numbers. And so I guess the bottom line is the Center for Independent Living belongs to the community, and what happens at the center depends more upon the people who come to the center and stay with the center and bring their issues to the center than it does with Alan or with people who work here. And the group that sits down and has the responsibility for the most strategy and the most planning and the most heavy-duty administration thinking is probably your board of directors. That's a group of volunteers who have to take this stuff particularly serious because they share that responsibility with the executive director in terms of keeping the lights on as well as keeping the outreach into the community and getting the information. So I don't know if any of you are on the board of directors. Maybe I should ask that question. Is anybody here on that board, on the board of directors of this organization? Well, it's my opinion that I think you might want to consider that at some future point. Because I think that way you are in a position to help carry the responsibility of serving your community. I think you should aspire to that at some point. Now, I may be, this is my opinion, like I said, Alan. You may have a different, I don't think he has a different opinion, but it could be. But I would encourage people who are volunteers to learn what they could and then step up to the plate and share the responsibility at the board level. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. Let's see. One of the virtues of or benefits, of being in a position as a SIL director is that perspective. I could see a lot of things, and one of the things that I saw as being an executive director was that we couldn't do it all, and but some of the folks who came to our Center for Independent Living were really angry and had been really dumped on, and I had nothing to offer. I mean, I had no suggestions, and I could not see the system changing for them. And they would actually express in the strongest terms to me their anger, to the point where I could have accepted responsibility for that because, heck, I got a paycheck. I mean, I'm a SIL director. I got a paycheck and they don't got no services. And maybe I'm supposed to get them services. Maybe I'm supposed to go out and make something happen. But it became painfully obvious to me in my maturity that as often as I would go down to the state capitol and sit in the meetings with the bureaucrats, and even though I was kind of polished in my demeanor, and I could sit in front of a meeting and describe what was going on in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Washington, Pennsylvania, no matter how many times I could do that, and how many nods of the head in agreement I could get the bureaucrats to nod with me, I made very little progress. I made very little progress in actually getting the attention and getting the type of movement at the state and local government level. I would sit there and listen to promises. They would promise me that such and such a program was going to start or program change was going to happen, and I would leave the table thinking it was going to happen. And a year or two later, would come down the road and hear they cut a deal with somebody else for something different. They lied. Sometimes they lied just to get me back out the door. Or they thought I was on their side. I was one of their team players, and that since we were buddies and we had some sort of agreement, they really didn't have to do what they told me they were going to do because I would protect their butts. That's what they thought. Well, I got caught in that game a couple times. I'm sad to say. You gotta learn. I learned everything the hard way. Everything the hard way. Nothing came easy. And the first 10 years I worked in independent living centers, which was during the 80s, and I worked so hard, I decided I hadn't gotten much done because I was trying to deal with housing issues. We didn't get much, we didn't solve any issues. We had all kinds of meetings. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we didn't really have much to show for it at the end of the 80s. And so I actually left the independent living movement and come back through some issues. And when I came back in 1990, I had a different posture in that at that point in time, I realized how powerless I was. And as a new still director, what I began to understand was the only folks who really made impressions on the folks was not me, who could show up in nice get-up in a polished method, but it was the folks who really were dealing with the housing issues, really dealing with the transportation concerns. Those folks, they could, if I could get them in the room, and me be either not there at all, or or in the back, but if I can get the microphone in the folks in my community, if I can get them at the table, I could make a lot more progress. Or if I could get them to really express their anger by doing a picket in the street, making helping 15 of them show up at the Secretary of Welfare's office on the same day with the same message. If I could do that kind of stuff, they'd heard it. They really did jump. And so, next thing I know, I'm wearing a T-shirt that looks kind of like that. Some of you might have seen it. Adapt. Now, I know adapt is a dirty word in Ohio. I do know that. But that is what it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be afraid of it. They're supposed to fear it. Because they don't, and that's what makes them deal with it. It really, that's power. Because the sequence of events that I have learned through my close observation is, if at first they scream, "Get out of here, I ain't dealing with you," then they look at the issue that brought you there in the first place, because they have to defend themselves. Well, they came here to talk about, more money for community services. Well, we do plenty of money for community services. I'll show you. And they start digging, and guess what? They don't. Well, then I'll just put this here and fix that, and that'll deal with it. But it all of a sudden, they hate you, but the issue is now on the top of the pile instead of the bottom of the pile. And the issue gets dealt with. And after they make a little progress on the issue, whether that's curb cuts, whether that's enforcement of IEPs in the school, whether that's more money for community services right here in Dayton, after they get angry with you and they look at the issue, somehow or other, they invite you back to the table, because they knew that after they studied the issue that you slapped them with, that there was something there, that there really was an issue, there really was a problem, and you had a handle on it, even though you're hard to take. And then they invite a couple of, okay, tell me what you were talking about when you were in the street. Okay, I can't give you this, this, and this, but I can give you this, this, and this. And what I found, that those folks who are willing to be perceived as terrible, nasty people enable the issue to move forward rapidly. And then the nice little, easy to get along with disabled folks in the velour pantsuits can sit down at the table and hash it all out and get it all fixed. But the group on the inside players need the outside players. The outside players need the inside players. And the last thing you want to do when you're playing this bad cop, good cop show, which is what it is, good cop, bad cop, you've heard that, you've seen it on Law and Order. The one thing you don't want to do is for the good cop and the bad cop to shoot at each other. Because that's an easy trap to fall in. Because if you don't understand, this is a strategy that if employed effectively will work. It is your best weapon. You will fall into this, those guys are bad in the street, or those guys sitting at the table with the governor are bad. We're the only ones who know where it's at. If you guys shoot at each other, there's no progress. There's just meltdown. But if you guys are shrewd enough and politically savvy enough to understand there's two roles that need to be played here. And you know what? If we're getting back to the history, that's what happened between the National ADAPT, and the National Council on Independent Living